right, here it is. The second question for our summer series.
Like it.
We're going to keep going. We actually have gotten quite a few now.
Yeah.
We're up to like 12. So we're going to, that's enough. We're good.
We're good.
So we're going to stop. We're not going to take any more submissions, and then we'll do one that's like a rapid fire.
Yeah. We'll have to do it.
Because we've got some that are really funny.
Yeah.
That we could just do really quick.
Yeah.
But
I like it.
yeah, it's going to be fun. So today we're going to be talking about Wesleyan theology.
Woohoo!
Do you feel like you know anything about that?
Oh, just a little.
A smidge?
A smidge.
A little bit?
Yeah.
A little bit? All right. Well, let's dive into it. I'm Becca. I'm the pastor of Family Ministries here at Katy First.
And I'm Mark. I'm the senior pastor at Katy First.
Welcome to the Katy First Family Podcast, where we offer ideas, inspiration, and encouragement to help you and your family grow as joyful disciples of Jesus Christ. This summer, we're getting into the questions you submitted, and today's question is, what about Methodist or Wesleyan theology made you decide to go with that over all other denominations and theologies?
What about it?
What about it? Are we going to take a moment to talk about your relaxed summer stance?
I think we can.
I mean, you're just like, I'm here for it.
I'm just, I'm utilizing the full capacity of this chair.
Yes.
I usually maybe utilize 10% of it on the edge, and now I'm in the full 100.
And now you're all
Even
in.
this arm that we have.
Yes, you're making it
we
work
have to have
for
a
you.
reason to have these long arms.
Yeah, I like that we have a table, but because I like to have a hard surface to have notes and a beverage and all that. But like a couch would be cozier. Or like
It could
a
be
couple of
cozier.
like comfy chairs.
Yeah.
Just saying. Anyway.
So, about that Methodist
about
stuff.
Wesleyan theology.
Yeah.
So let's
Where
start.
should we start?
Okay, let's hear. This is where I think we should start. I think it's only fair if we're going to talk about why we chose this to explain how it actually is a choice. So do you have any, let's say, education or experience with theologies or denominations that are not Wesleyan or United Methodist?
Yes. Yep.
I thought you were going to be like, yes, and then just stop. And I was like, well, that's
yes,
not
I
helpful
am.
in a podcast.
What else would you like me to say about
This
it?
is not an interrogation. I'm going to need more than a one-word answer.
Growing up, I grew up in the same church for 25 years. First year I met this church in Springdale, Arkansas. But had friends in other...
You said that so fast.
So fast.
Okay.
But had friends in other churches. And so, a little bit of experience with those churches just because that's...
Yeah.
But then in seminary, I very intentionally went to seminary in Atlanta, Georgia, because when I went into seminary, I knew I wanted to go to not a Methodist church. And there were a number of churches back then that I kind of thought were really cool and was like, oh, I'd love to just at least for a couple of years try them out. So when I was in seminary, I worked for a large non-denominational church, but the particular campus I was at was actually more like a church plant. So it was kind of the both end of a very large church, but also a small campus version of it. Named North Point, and the church I was at was called Decatur City Church. It's a wonderful church in Decatur, but the Atlanta area, and I loved it. It was really great. But of course, my seminary was a Methodist seminary, so I had the both and during all that. And I would describe to people, I was always like, yeah, I'm kind of a reluctant Methodist. And I wasn't sure in seminary if I was going to come back to the Methodist church. But I did.
Yeah.
But
I
did.
see that.
Here I am. Yeah.
You've been here.
So, and then in seminary, some people don't realize, but probably particularly about our Methodist seminaries.
Yes.
They're very ecumenical. And so you get a lot of experience with other traditions.
Yeah.
So like Candler and SMU, these are Methodist seminaries, and you have a lot of Episcopalians and Catholics and Lutherans and Presbyterians and non-denominational folks. So you get a good melting pot of experience in those that broadens you much wider than just Wesleyan Methodist.
Yeah,
So.
for sure. In seminary, like one of my favorite professors to take a class from. Like some of my professors, like I enjoyed them as people as well.
Yeah.
This guy was too aloof to hang out with.
Here, I have to fix it.
I knew it wouldn't last.
It was coming. All right.
But he was Catholic. And actually what I found so fascinating about him is that he had been Lutheran. And then he felt very convicted by, now I'm trying to remember my church history. Something that happened like in the 70s. Vatican II. Thank you.
Yeah.
That the issues between, I guess, Martin Luther, between the Lutheran Church and the Catholic Church had actually been resolved. And so he and his entire family converted
to Catholicism. How about that?
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
He was my systematics, or one of my systematics professors.
Yeah. My favorite professor was Catholic.
Oh, really?
Is Catholic.
Yeah. I feel like I should say, because I'm like systematic theology is a class you have to take that like is a particular way of looking at studying theology. It's kind of hard to explain quickly, but
yeah, I mean, it makes it turns theology into sort of this like very coherent, all the boxes make sense.
Yes.
Where like you have a theology that you have an explanation for everything. You sort of systematically are able to piece it all together so it all flows together. Which
my Methodist brain was like, I enjoy the organization of this. But ironically, my Wesleyan brain was like, nah, it's messier than this.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important kind of thing to note. So you've had these other experiences. Like I actually went to a Catholic university my first year of college, and kind of I went to mass several times just to check it out. I liked the ancient nature of it, right? I liked the ritual. For me, I like a good ritual, whether it's like church or like a coffee ritual. Like I just enjoy the rhythm of things. It helps me to kind of shut my mind off.
Yeah.
And so I could just be there. But there were some pretty significant issues that I had with the theology to some extent of the Catholic Church, but mostly it was like with practice.
Yeah.
The fact that if you felt called to like be a priest, you had to be male. And there's more, but there's no reason to go into all of that.
Yeah.
But I was raised United Methodist. I went to Klein United Methodist in Spring, just on the north side of Houston. And but I'm with you. I left the church. I actually left, I would say, the faith. There was a period of time I was not a Christian.
Yeah.
While I was in college. Really the end of my senior year in high school. We had a rule in our house growing up that you had to go to church, you had to go to youth group, and church on Sunday. Church on Sunday mornings was non-negotiable. Youth group was negotiable if you could drive. If you couldn't drive yourself, then you were going.
Yeah.
But once I could drive, it was kind of up to me.
Yeah.
But I couldn't go anywhere else. So like if I wanted to go do something Sunday night, that was pretty much my option.
Okay.
Although it wasn't like I was a cool kid who like wanted to, what was I going to do? Hang out with my orchestra friends somewhere. Do you know what we did? We would hang out at somebody's house and watch the extended version of Lord of the Rings. That's what we did. I was a deeply cool kid.
You were such a nerd.
I know. I know who I am. I'm good with it.
That's great though.
But one of the things that I think brought me back, one of the things that I still love about Wesleyan theology is this reverence for the mystery of God, which I don't think, if you're listing the like core tenets of Wesleyan theology, right? Grace and the work of grace would be massive in there. Social holiness. I'm trying to think like just off the top. I think this is also a reshoot podcast like last week's was.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think last time I came with like notes ready to go. This time I trusted my brain maybe a little too much. But I think for me, there is this beautiful interplay kind of woven through the whole thing of we don't feel the need to define all of these things exactly. Yeah. We are fine with going, it's a holy mystery.
Yeah.
And in fact, the words that we use specifically around things like communion or whatever are a holy mystery in which God makes God's self known.
Yeah.
And for me, that mystery part ends up being really welcoming and comforting, because I can be really struggling with something and not feel like I have to resolve it in order to be faithful.
Yeah.
In order to continue to be, that sounds like, in order to continue to practice my faith. Does that make sense? So the mystery, the wideness of God, the expansiveness of God in Wesleyan theology, the acceptance of God.
Yeah.
Those to me are big pieces.
Yeah. Like when I was in seminary and out of the Methodist Church for a while, I missed sort of the sacramental part of it.
Yeah.
Which is something I never really thought about until I was out of it.
Yeah.
Around baptism, but probably mainly communion.
Which are our two sacraments, baptism and communion.
And kind of that very regular communion, but even what communion was about, our theology around it. But, I think for me, what I love most about our tradition is it is a both and tradition. We are people of the head and the heart. We are people of a deeply personal faith and a deeply social faith. And so, I kind of love how it holds a lot of things together.
Things that you wouldn't think would hold.
Right. Things that you wouldn't think would hold. I remember when I was younger, I can distinctly remember like having a conversation with a friend who went to a different church, and we were kind of talking about our different churches' experience. And I remember then saying to him, and it's still true, I would rather belong to a church that is really good at serving its community and known for that, as opposed to a church that has really great preaching, and that's what draws people to that church. And that's probably still true. And I think when I think of Methodism, that's part of what I think is one of the hallmarks that probably people experience, because we are people who engage into our community, into civic service, into serving people. It's a big emphasis of us.
Yeah.
But it comes back to a theology that talks about social holiness being one of those key components. We never grow in faith alone, and that faith also then demands of us that we care for our neighbors and the people in our community and the injustices that we see. So it leads us to a social justice, and we are not a denomination that sees social justice as a sub or even anti-gospel thing. It is part of the gospel for us. So I really love that, and that's probably I'm more proud of our United Methodist tradition than I have ever been. Yeah. Because of all those things. Yeah. And I think there are a lot of imperfections. Sure. A lot of things why I was a reluctant Methodist in seminary that are still around. We're not a perfect denomination by any means. I think to me, it hangs on those things. That's what I love most about it. I love the idea of social holiness leading me into a social justice. I love the idea of a denomination that holds in tension, and I don't even know if tension's the right word, but holds together the head and the heart, a very personal faith and a very practical faith. And it isn't a very good systematic theology faith, because it doesn't really care about it cares about being practical and making a difference.
I do think that's one of the things that I both love and sometimes hate, is that Methodist is it was originally intended as sort of like a slam on John and Charles Wesley and their holiness club.
Yeah, their rigidness.
And I feel like we maybe should have started a little bit with that there was, when we say Wesleyan theology, we're specifically talking about John and Charles Wesley, brothers, in the 18th century in England. Anglican priest who did not intend to start a new denomination, but rather really just wanted a holiness movement.
Yeah.
They started the Holy Club at Oxford, which is hilarious. And they held each other accountable. And it was intentionally engineered to be really practical ways to practice your faith. Yeah. And our denomination still really focuses on that. So we will make a rule and 15 exceptions to that rule because we don't want anything to get in the way of our ability to do or work the mission of the United Methodist Church, which is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And so I think, we'll say, you should do it like this. Except if you can't do it like this, you could do it like this, or also this, or there's this weird workaround, or you know what, it's fine, just like bring it before these two committees and we'll just approve it. Like there's always this, like there's always a way if enough people can agree that this is important. And I find that is really wonderful, and also sometimes tiresome. Mm-hmm. Just hold the center. Just like say this is the line and hold the line. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes that's just my personality of I want things to be a little bit more simple and efficient. And I would not say that our denomination is either simple or efficient. But I think gracious is a good word, or at least striving to be more gracious. Yeah. And I think grace and the way that we understand grace to be at work in the world is a hallmark of our theology.
And I would add to that love, because I think John Wesley, that was it for him.
Yep.
Like growing in holiness, you can equate that to maturing and deeper love. Mm-hmm. And that would be our expectation. That is part of the pathway, that we're not sort of stagnant beings, that God is taking us on this sanctification process that perfects us or matures us, but not matures us in rigidness, matures us in love.
Yeah.
And that love translates to an internal and an external love.
Yeah.
And I love that is the core.
Yeah.
Right. That's what he emphasizes. Wesley, he might use words like obedience, but it's not a rigidness or legalism, but it is a love-fueled faith.
Yeah.
That takes it very seriously.
Yeah.
That's going to have practices around it. Mm-hmm. That's going to have accountability to it, but it's one that's grounded in love, fueled in grace.
I mean, I think that grace, the unique sort of nature of the way that we see it at work, this grace that goes out before us, which is why we baptize infants, right? Because we believe that before you even know it, prevenient grace, God's at work claiming you. But I think to your point about not just claiming you like some weird sort of proprietary thing, but loving you and hoping that you will love back.
Yeah.
Right? And not just love God, but love others, right? Yeah. And then this kind of moment of that may happen multiple times. I don't think I understood that until like fairly recently in the life of United Methodist, that like you might have these moments, what we would call like justification moments, this kind of aha moment. You might have those several times of this need for a recognition of your need for God and a desire to be with God, to be in relationship with God. Yeah. And then like you were talking about the sanctification. I love to freak out confirmation students or youth in general, or really anybody, I guess, when I talk about how when you go up for ordination as a pastor, one of the questions that they ask you in front of everyone is, do you expect to be made perfect in this life? And what they mean is perfect in Christian love. Yeah. And you better say yes. And you better say it loudly. Yeah. It's an important part of it. Yeah. And John Wesley believed that he knew a couple people who had been made perfect through sanctifying grace. Not in everything they did was always right, but really everything they did was it was an intentional loving gesture
Yes. Yeah.
of Christ's love filling them and then pouring out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious. So I don't know if we want to go down this road.
Let's do it.
I
don't even know what it is, but I'm here.
It's great to talk about the things we love.
Yeah.
What are the I don't know, critiques?
Yeah.
What are the frustrations that you still have about it?
Yeah.
Our wonderful tradition? Or the things that used to be frustrations?
Yeah. I think I do genuinely get frustrated sometimes. I don't know that this is unique to UMC, so there's that caveat.
Yeah.
I am a pastor and not a CEO. Mm-hmm. And I do not think, I think sometimes I think this may be the church universal, but I know from experience that sometimes we're really good about training CEOs and not so good about cultivating pastors, or in turn, not so good about in our congregations cultivating ministers. We're cultivating like program leaders or event coordinators. And none of that is what we're called to. And is the church a business? I mean, it has money and a bank account, and like the federal government gives it a number. So I guess that makes it that. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. But that should never be in the top 2 of our primary focuses, at least. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so sometimes we should do things that are weird seeming because it is the right and loving and gracious thing to do, not because it makes business sense. Mm-hmm. And we should be willing to, in my opinion, surrender. This is going to make people so nervous. Surrender the things that make it more of an organization. Mm-hmm. I put that in quotes that you can't see if you're just listening. But that make it,
I thought these were bunnies, so thank you for
I'm
telling
here
me
for you,
those
buddy.
air quotes.
But that make it more of an organization. We should be willing to let those go in order to be the body of Christ. And it doesn't come into conflict as often as I used to feel like it did. I think a lot of that, especially here at Katy First, is that I think we all really do have this beautiful sense of a desire and a drive to work together for each other, for the love of God and love of others. Yeah. And so it doesn't come into conflict very much because we're very clear on our call and purpose. Yeah. But I do get frustrated sometimes that we tend to lean into the organization as opposed to the body of Christ. Yeah. But I do think that to a large extent is a church problem, not a United Methodist problem.
Yeah. I would say that's true for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Also, just like, can we stop having everything be like a weird an acronym?
Yeah, we're very bad at acronyms.
Yeah.
All of them. All the acronyms.
I was just like UMM, UMW, UMCOR, BOM, DCOM.
We could go on and on.
BHECM, GBHEM.
Yeah.
I know what all of these are, but also like sometimes it's very unwelcoming for people.
Very acronymy.
Yeah, it's just very unwelcoming to people. They don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What about you?
Probably the ones that come to mind, probably the one, like when I would say I was a reluctant Methodist. I said this in the last one. I kind of still have a little bit of I keep at arm's length the label of a particular denomination.
Okay.
Like I can remember growing up being like, why do we talk about John Wesley so much? John Wesley didn't write the Bible.
It's true.
Like, we elevate this guy to sainthood or above.
Yes.
He didn't, the world didn't stop with him.
Definitely not a perfect dude.
Definitely not a perfect dude.
Also not made perfect in Christian love in his life.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I think that is also true of any denomination. Learning to kind of embrace your tradition and what makes you who you are while staying open-handed. And not making it where you become so insular or combative against, I'm Methodist and therefore I'm not these guys and these guys and those people. in kind of a competitive view of which Christianity is the right one.
Yeah.
I'm just not interested in that.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
feel
interested
that.
in a denomination that wants to like defend itself as the best or right one. And
Do you feel like we do that? It's okay if you say yes.
I feel like we used to.
Okay.
And I think any church is always at risk at wanting to sort of have an institutional sort of, I guess, revival of sorts. And, you know, anywhere where that kind of shows up, it's like, I'm not interested in reviving a thing that used to be. I'm interested in how the heart of this can continue to breathe new life in a new way. But I say all that because, like I said, even now, I'm more proud of our tradition than ever. So I feel like I teach United Methodist and Wesleyan concepts way more. Like Hannah, I think, told me in the past 2 years, she's like, you've talked about the Wesleyan quadrilateral so much, and I feel like I never hear you talk about that ever before. It's like, well, I guess that's kind of true. And then I will say I used to, and I have, for those of you that grew up probably in more conservative traditions and have made your way over to the UMC, this is, people used to think that Methodists didn't read their Bibles.
Oh.
And I remember growing up kind of thinking that too. Like, I wish we were more Bible-based.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't really think that anymore.
Yeah.
But there is, though I've heard this come from other traditions as well. And there is probably a little bit of element of truth in there, but I don't feel like that's true at this church. People take it seriously. Yeah. It's not sort of, and I think that can be true. It can be sort of, maybe in some of our mainline traditions, a little, not secondary, but kind of still taken seriously without it being, this real sort of legalistic thing either.
Yeah.
So that was probably some of my critique back in the day.
That makes sense.
And just some of the kind of polity organizational stuff. But that is true of any large thing.
I think for me, to some extent, there's there's a desire to be United Methodist, less now, but definitely previously, more out of like, it seemed to be the closest that I could get to what felt like a right theology.
Yeah.
You talked about how ecumenical seminary is. When I was serving in a church in Longview, we had a group of ecumenical pastors that did a theology on tap at a local brewery. The brewery actually had reached out to us. Cool guy. Anyway. And was like, this is something that I think it would be cool to host here. Yeah. And so we had United Methodist, we had a Baptist, First Baptist. I'm just saying, like, it was a big deal. Yeah. Disciples of Christ, Presbyterian, Anglican. For a while we had a Catholic, Father Bill, but Father Bill's schedule was tough. And so he didn't. And literally what we would do is we would take like a theological or social topic and have a panel, and three of us would discuss it from our three viewpoints.
That's cool.
And then we would have like questions, and then they would chat at their tables, and it was super fun. But what I learned from that was like, while there are things, so for instance, there's a difference in theology between like predestination and sort of like a free will sort of a thing. Predestination is this idea that there's an elect that God chooses and that these people alone will be saved. And that does not work for me. Yeah. However, having been a part of these friendships and relationships, I realized, I don't know, I could probably worship there in that church too. So I haven't, but, and we're very similar to, not Anglican, Episcopalian, that's what I should have said, which is just the American version of more or less of the Anglican church. Yeah. But I'm here for some Episcopalian, like, that's like some high church fun. First of all, their priests get some really awesome outfits.
They do get some pretty intricate, good clergy robe type stuff. Yeah.
They have like the whole, think Catholic, but fun.
Yeah.
You know, although the Pope's outfits are pretty great.
Yeah, well, there's only one.
One Pope outfit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So. No, that's true. But their vestments, that's the fancy word for clergy robes, they are awesome.
Yeah.
And they're colorful. And they have like, I don't know what it's called, but the you have the robe and then you have like the whole thing that goes on top. You know what I mean?
So
that has the color.
Cassock?
Maybe? I don't think so. It could
Probably
be.
not.
It's very cool.
It
and
is.
Women can be pastors or priests.
Yeah.
I think they're called priests.
Yeah.
In the Episcopalian Church.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Now this sounds like I'm jumping ship.
Stay with us, Becca. Stay with us.
I'm going to. Don't worry.
Yeah. You know, I mean, to circle back on,
Yes, please.
I now I am more proud of our denomination.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking even with Hannah this the other day, thinking, there's not another denomination I could see myself fitting into anymore. Because I think the Methodist Church holds, and it's this nature nurture type of thing. Am I this way because I grew up in this denomination or what? But all the things I've named, with the inclusiveness now of our denomination than ever before, I just really appreciate who the United Methodists are and who we're trying to become, the heart of our denomination, even when in practice, of course, it's not always perfect.
Yeah.
Even when it gets cumbersome because it's large and
it does.
And that's going to be true anywhere. You're going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you're going to have complications.
Yeah.
Even when you're a church by yourself, belonging to no one but yourself. It's going to get messy within that church. So, that's just part of life. But I think I remember in high school reading like a Methodist doctrine book, and I loved it. I was like, this is me.
You're such a nerd.
That was so nerdy, and I loved it.
I loved it for you.
It was like, and then I was still a bit, and so I'm glad to have had a season of life where I kind of had the UMC a little bit at arm's length.
Yeah.
And then to have kind of slowly made my way back in.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then now kind of going, I love this denomination.
I think it's good to say it's not a default. It's an intentional choice that I made.
Yeah.
And that I continue to make.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on that. I think I agree, especially now. I think one of the things that I'm very proud of for the UMC is there are definitely things in our history where we messed up. We did not make the right call. It was neither good practice nor good theology.
Yeah.
And yet I feel like we own that now, but we don't just go, oh yeah, that was bad. There have been genuine conversations, official statements, polity changes that are apologized, that are sorry for the ways in which we fell short and the harm that we did, and a genuine desire to do better and a belief that God is helping us to be better. And I love that.
Yeah.
And I do think for instance, our current bishop will invite other bishops from other denominations to come to ordination service. Mm-hmm. So in the last few years, our ordinands have been also laid hands on by, pastors from AME churches and Episcopal churches, and I don't remember all the churches.
Yeah, I think this year we had the ELCA.
Which is
Evangelical
Lutheran.
Something.
Yeah.
And then it had to have been an Episcopalian. I'm pretty sure it was the Episcopalian.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that. Yeah, but it's just cool, right? Just an open invitation to come, and they do come. Yeah. And we have the celebration together. There's this recognition of one another that I think is really special. Yeah. Especially with churches like the AME church, where we used to all be one church, and then there was a church split, and that's like a whole other church history lesson. Yep. But I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think I like this question because I think it's nice to get to talk about why. I realized, you know what? what is today? Like 2 days ago was my 10th anniversary of being a pastor. Like I can't believe I've done this for 10 years. I've been in ministry longer, but as a pastor,
you're a whole decade old.
My ministry is my pastoral ministry is a whole decade old.
This is true.
It wasn't an accident. And in fact, like partway through, I was like, never mind. And took like some time off and still came back to it.
Yeah.
A very intentional choice.
Yeah.
So I love that we got to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I know our congregation is filled with people who have or are even still like, is this the intentional choice I want to make, or why did I make or they had to go through that process. So I think it's cool to get to share together. And
I think there's a lot, especially in Methodist churches, we get so many different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And you end up here for some reason. And, and I always I want people to know when you're at this church, what our Methodist Wesleyan kind of viewpoint on is. And then, there's a lot of people that don't share 100% exactly what we, particularly around baptism. Mm-hmm. Some are like, I'll have my kid baptized. Some are like, no, absolutely. I'm going to wait till they can make that choice. Okay, great. As long as you have thought about it.
Yeah.
And I want you to know where we stand on it.
Yes.
We have social principles. We have a whole bunch of things that it's like, as long as you know where we're at.
Yeah.
We are also not a denomination that's going to like have a hard line that says agree with us 100% on every single thing, or you're
out.
Outie. Yeah.
It's not our call to make.
Yeah.
I love that. Mm-hmm. This actually was a 2-part question.
Is there a second part?
Yeah, but you're...
Oh, yeah. I do. That's right.
There was a part that was just for me, and it was a little rude, but also very funny.
I don't think it's rude. I think it's...
It's the second part of the question was, for Becca, what is 6 times 7? Because you know that I'm not good at math.
Yeah.
But one thing you should know, first of all, the answer is 42, which is the answer to life and everything.
Yeah. It's also Jackie Robinson's baseball number.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool. Good to know.
One day every year, everybody wears 42 on Jackie Robinson Day.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
That's a nice thing to know.
Who?
Okay.
Was Jackie Robinson a Methodist? Or his first manager? I don't know. Go watch the movie. And Methodists are in it. Okay. Just to bring in Methodist in there.
I love it. But I will say that it was easy for me to know the answer to this because when I talked about in a sermon how I wasn't good at math, one of our current 4th graders at the time, I think 3rd grade, excuse me, made me on the back of a handout that was in the bulletin, a 7 multiplication, like a times table with all the 7s.
Yeah.
And I framed it and it's in my office.
Yeah.
So it's very handy.
That maybe there's some predestination in that.
Get out.
She made that for you so that this question can be answered today.
Yeah. Well, I was ready. Thanks to that student.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you have found some inspiration and encouragement for yourself and for your family. If you'd like to get our podcast delivered directly to you each week, you can subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify. For more information about Katy First and upcoming events for your family, you can visit our website at katyfirst.org. Most importantly, we want you to know this, that in the middle of your ordinary, messy life, whatever that looks like for you in this moment, you are not alone, you are doing a good job, and you are so loved.
And we'd love to see you on a Sunday or back here next week with our next summer question.
It's going to be a doozy.
Whatever it's going to be.
Oh, I know what it's going to be.
Okay, good.
Brace yourself.
Ready for it.
Let's do it.
Have a good week.